will only build a better design. And so the way I prefer to go through it is like we just had. A couple of common frameworks, different groups look at it from their perspective. The key common denominator is you've all done the same diagnosis. And with that now, you're going to have different opinions, but the opinions are strategically, they're aiming for the same thing. There wasn't anybody here that was a speed freak. The argument for speed was, we're dying in the marketplace. We've got a product that is losing credibility with our consumers, and if we don't fix that fast, we're going to be in big trouble. Okay? So all the arguments that were raised here were based consciously or subconsciously on what you have learned from the diagnosis. That is a very important dynamic that I cannot stress enough. Okay, so now we've got a strategy, we've got organization capabilities. We'll come back to those next time. What I want to do is take a few minutes, have you work on a short case study where we're going to look at process design. And the subject here comes up of bureaucracy. And all of our clients complain about bureaucracy, and very few of our clients know what to do about eliminating bureaucracy. So let me just say that bureaucracy has, it started with the Industrial Revolution, which my colleagues at Proctor showed me an old factory in Manchester, England, and they said, this was the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. This was the first factory on the planet Earth. And out of that came a set of rules. The rules are you break the work down into the smallest possible piece, you get good supervision over it, and that way you can mass produce great products. And Henry Ford, with the assembly line, kind of epitomized that. And what used to take, I think it was 13 hours to put together a car, with the assembly line, they were spitting out a car every 90 seconds. There is no doubt that the use of some bureaucratic principles brought a lot of things forward, but a lot of stuff has happened. So now I want to look at, if we were to take this process, this is a generic process. We have materials or information that's being supplied, and then we have somebody that does something with that. They change it in some way. The information is turned into a report, or the material is started to be produced into a product. And if there are some errors, those errors need to be fixed. Then we need a decision that it's good to go. Then it moves on, and now we do something else to the information or the material. And if there are errors there, those have to be fixed. And then there's a final decision that it's good, and the final product or service is then delivered to the customer. Very generic process. Okay? I want to focus on what's going on between the boxes, not the boxes themselves. So what happens if one organization supplies the ingredients or the information, and another organization starts to work with it? What typically could go wrong at that interface? Jerry?
Miscommunication.
Miscommunication, so what?
Supplier thinks that the materials are used for like one purpose, whereas people receiving the supply.
Okay. Okay. You might say, what about the information on XYZ? Well, I didn't know you needed that. We've been doing ABCD for years. Nobody's ever told us about XYZ. Well, I shouldn't have to explain that to you. You know, this is... Okay, yes.
Loss of time between information exchange.
Okay. I mean, yes, you need to communicate, but sometimes that slows things down. Okay. All right. Do we ever get into the blame game here between the two? With Lindsay Industries around their enzyme product, what would they say about the supply of the input? It's crazy. Well, it meets the specs in our laboratories. It meets the specs. Obviously you're doing something wrong in the production process that's messing it up. Maybe you're storing it in the wrong temperature or whatever it might be. Okay, so all that kind of stuff can go on. All right. Now, what if you have inside Lindsay? Now you've got somebody that makes the change, that starts to convert the materials, but there are some errors, and so now you have a different department that has to fix the errors. What typically happens at that interface? Same kind of stuff. Communication, lag time, pointing fingers, misalignments, all of that. In other words, whenever you've got a boundary between two different units in a process like this, you have the potential for difficulty. And this is where bureaucracy gets its bad name, all right? Same thing if we have one unit that does all this, but then the decision maker is in a different unit or is in a different arena and not part of all of this, then you can have the same kind of difficulties, and on it goes. If you have a support problem, let's say that, let's say we have our favorite IT geek here, and he's our IT department, and now our computers have gone down, and we need urgent help, and Brady says, have you got any idea? The whole mainframe for the company is down. We've got people screaming all over. We're deploying our resources. We'll get to you as soon as we can. Does that help you, Eddie, with your situation? Okay, so there, we've got the delay, and you know, oh, don't give me that. You've just got a bureaucratic. You're just taking care of the executive suite before you come down to where the work is really done. All those kinds of things go on. All right. So the point is, wherever possible, don't break up a continuous process with organizational boundaries. It starts to complicate, and for all the things that we talked about here. So this is a set of design parameters that was introduced many, many years ago. There are a lot of very sophisticated quality approaches today. When you start working for companies, you'll be getting into black belts and Six Sigma and Kaizens and all kinds of stuff. This is all good stuff. I'm not trying to demean any of them. These are all very good, sophisticated programs. But I will tell you this, they're all built on about 4 fundamentals that we're going to go through right now. I'm just going to give you the fundamentals, and watch for this when you start working in companies that start bringing in quality technology, and see if they're aligned with these or not. First rule is, in a process like this, only draw the boundaries where there is a tangible output or an actual change of state in the material or information. In other words, a lot of these boundaries don't add value. They're there for organizational convenience or administrative simplicity or convenience or comfort, not simplicity, but comfort. They're not there because they actually add value to the process. So now if we look at our process, tell me, where are the points where there's a tangible handoff or an actual change of state to our inputted supply material? Where does it first change its state? Where does it transform into something new? Task 1, okay? So that's a legitimate boundary, or at least that's where there's a handoff, that's where tangible. This group says we gave you the material. This group says I've turned it into something. See, where there's a tangible handoff, people are now accountable for something. The business unit is accountable. How would you like to be the business unit that's accountable for decisions? What's the tangible that you've got there? So, okay, we've got that. Where does that change state next? Task 2. What about fix? Well, fix just corrects what that should have done in the first place. Theoretically, that's nothing new. It's just getting this to where it should have been. The decision does not change anything physically. Okay? It changes next with task 2. And then we've got the final product. So, based on that, instead of 7 or 8 boundaries in the process, you could justify perhaps 3. Okay? Now, here, I'm sorry, question.
So you said there should not be a boundary between task 1 and fix.
Right.
But how does that work? Because fix team is like, I would say they're like testing teams who are looking to the product, what you have come up with after task 1, if that's perfect or not. So you mean to say that who is creating the product, they themselves should check if it's fine or not?
You could have someone from that team have the role of checking, yes.
Okay, someone who is not taking part in the development task, right?
Well, for example, in our production teams at P&G, we had a team of 9 people. 8 of those people were producing and packaging, boxing up the product. One person on our team who could do all the other tasks, one person was exclusively making the quality control check to make sure that it was up to speed and there was nothing defective that was going out. But they were part of our team.
You're taking operations into consideration. So at that time when the other team, 8 members are making the product, what is that extra person doing till the time it's not ready to show?
Well, there's a continuous stream of product coming off, and his responsibilities were to, at regular intervals, to pull the product off and make a full check, including going into the quality lab if necessary, to make sure that it was up to snuff. Okay? So the process was being done, but we didn't have to. Whenever you have a boundary, you've got to take a number. Just like with, you know, our computer IT situation, if it's an emergency, we have to take a number because they're fully booked and, you know, it'll take a while before they can get to us. If the resources in your team, you handle it right there. And so that's what we did. Okay? But bureaucracy would say, well, those that are producing the product aren't responsible enough to actually make an objective quality analysis, and therefore, you know, they can't be done.
That's what my thought process was.
Yeah, okay, and that's fair, unless everybody is deeply committed to delivering innovative products of high quality. Then a team member of the production team can be trusted with that and will do a good job. Okay, yes, please.
I have a question about design.
Just a minute,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. So I have a question about the difference between the solid line and the dotted line. Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the same.
And so one example I'm thinking of in manufacturing, let's say a company makes a helicopter. They have a supplier that gives them a part. So they put one of their own employees at the supplier to make sure the stuff coming in is good. Is that in a way taking that boundary away? Or
Well, let's put it this way. That would be a thinner dotted line
okay.
than that one. Okay? But yeah, it's crossing over. In fact, there are some, Honda and others do a lot more than that. But yeah, that happens. And I might say that at Lindsay Industries, given the situation they've got, that might be warranted here. Okay? So anyway, okay, good question. Yeah, Jerry, sorry.
Sorry. I just had a question over decision.
Yeah.
So with decisions, so normally you'll have like the process approver, and the acceptor, the contributors, and the executors. And so with the approvers, would they normally be on the same team then as like the rest of the group?
If you made this analysis and wanted to be true to this in terms of an organization structure, the decider would be in the same unit that was doing all of this. They may have a very different role. They might be a more management or supervisor kind of person, but they would not be somebody in a different department with different priorities and different hierarchy to report to. They would all be part of one team. Okay? So at this one, you would have at most 3 teams. Now, the second set of guidelines kicks in. This is just number 1. Notice, instead of like 7 or 8 boundaries, we can only justify 2 boundaries in that whole process. Now we question whether those are needed. And here are 3 questions to help us determine. Is the technology so complex between the 3 units that one team couldn't do all 3 of them? Okay? Now, it depends on what this is. If we're producing a simple stuffed toy for children, and we've got the outer materials, and we've got the stuffing, we've got some buttons and stuff that need to be sewed on, is that so complex that one team couldn't do the whole thing? No. But if we're doing a space shuttle, where each one of these is a subsystem of the space shuttle, and it needs a separate building for all of that, then you probably would need a different structure for those. So that's number 1. Number 2, are the units geographically separated? Okay? Now, frankly, with the internet, a lot of those barriers are coming down. In fact, I know a group that's working on a project where there are 2 groups that are geographically separated, but they're supposed to function as one corporate entity. Okay? So, but that's a possibility. And then the third thing, are the tasks on different time cycles? So if it's like a 3-shift operation, you wouldn't expect one team to do all of that, period. On the other hand, let's say that this is a larger research and product development process, and this is the research function that's finding a cure for cancer and developing different formula for medicines to help attack cancer, and this is delivering a product today in the market. Asking one team to be responsible for both the long term and the here and now is not a good idea. Why is that not a good idea?
Different strategies.
Different strategies. if you have to make your choice between which of these two to give attention to, if you have a crisis here or a crisis here, which one gets the attention? The here and now always gets the attention. So at P&G, the pure upstream research lab, it was not only in a different building, it was almost in a different state. It had a big barbed wire fence around the whole thing, and even an employee, a general manager, had to have the credential and would have to be on the visitors list at the guard shack to even get in, because they didn't want the researchers being distracted by other things. So anyway, okay. So tangible handoffs and these three. Now, I've got a case study. This is an actual client case. And I later found out the plant manager was a member of the church. Project that's going to eliminate an unsafe piece of equipment or situation out on the production line. So where do we first have a tangible result where we have we've identified, but nothing constructive is moving forward? What does it first move forward? 18 or 19? We designed a project. Has anything changed?
No.
The design? No. So where does it tangibly start to move forward?
25, complete work.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a tangible one there, but now we've got to identify a project, we've got to conduct the project, we've got to complete the project. So where do we first have a project? We've got an idea, somebody spotted something, but an idea is not a project. Where do we first start to have a project?
Maybe 16, authorized budget.
Number 1.
Investigate.
I think we danced
10,
already.
scope, okay, so we scope the job and we write the recommendation. Okay, a job scope, that's tangible. We're going to replace 15 cams in the machinery. Okay, that's a specific scope. Is that the first place where we have something definite? In our systems, you don't go anywhere without an expenditure request. You have a form that says, oh, we want money for the purpose of this. Once you've got some money, then all these other things have a legitimate call on the expert's time to give you stuff. So I would say there you got 1 and 3, and then but notice all this other stuff. We're assigning, we're looking, we're listing, we're entering. We're investigating, we're determining, but now I would agree, number 10, now we've got a specific scope. Okay, well, you can look at the rest of the list. Your task, your task is minimal steps, minimal handoffs between departments.
Say like there are going to be some hazards that
Okay.
you just have the guy who noticed it fix it.
Okay,
Don't deal with this,
Okay.
and there should be another decision about, does it need like intense design by the engineering department, or does it just need to be figured out by some
Okay.
person?
so you called out a couple of key decision points and how to handle those.
And so our idea then, you can eliminate most of these steps by just committing to its operations, or its central maintenance,
Okay.
or its engineering.
And you make those groups accountable to design. So how many handoffs did you have? You didn't get to that. Okay, all right, that's fine. And
Yeah, it's like one.
we had to cut you down to on time wise. So anyway, this group, how far did you get?
Well, similar, I guess. We thought maybe you could just bring one person from each group to a table so that they're on location. So maybe you have 2 steps is really, it's identified, you all sit down and figure out what the solution needs to be, and the next step is you go build it, and you're done. So you have a person from accounting, a person from central maintenance, and you just have a big discussion to get it done.
The multifunctional team, which takes the hierarchy and the bureaucracy out of it. All the input is there, all the specialization is there, all the resources are there, but you cut down all of this going up one silo and down the other and over again and all that. Okay? Very nice. Good. Over here.
So we said 5 steps.
I know your answer was collaboration. I know that.
Yeah.
It's learning. Okay.
Leadership. Anyway.
Okay. So you had how many steps?
5-ish.
5-ish,
So
okay.
that counts like the identifying the problem. So
Right.
someone in the plant says, hey, there's a problem. It goes to
Right.
engineering and maintenance. They come in, identify the scope, do the ER, then they send it to operations for just like an understanding and final approval. Then they do it. Then it goes to accounting for a review, just so that accounting knows what's going on with the budget.
Okay.
And we put accounting as a bottom step because if safety is such a high priority, what does it matter how much it costs?
Okay. All right, so you had 5 steps, and it looks like you had 3 players: engineering, maintenance, and operations, but just a couple back and forth was all. And then accounting at the very end. Okay? Much more streamlined. Okay, I like the creativity here. How about over here?
So we had, for problem identification, you send it to the central maintenance people who do some investigation, figure out what like root causes, that sort of thing. But then they have a large budget that they can just, up to a certain level, they can just use to fix things. And then when it goes above that level, then they go for approvals for a project.
Okay.
But a lot of it's just contained within.
So if they didn't have that policy, you would say this needs to be installed, this kind of policy.
Yeah.
Okay? Up to a certain level, you can just go and do it.
Yeah.
Okay? All right? Good?
So we've enveloped also, our idea was similar. We also want to put into central maintenance people from engineering and accounting.
Okay.
And just have one handoff to that group.
Okay.
And have them kind of take care of it as well.
You notice how that idea cropped up after they heard from you? No.
I'm pretty sure they overheard.
Hey, yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. Now, this is a simple example, but a serious example. And I'll show you what the actual solution was that they came up with, and then I'll tell you what the outcome was of this. But there's some good thinking here. And again, this was very, very rushed, just because we're running out of time. So here's what they actually came up with. Now, I'm not real happy with the 24 steps, but they're engineers, they're anal, they live with this stuff every day. Frankly, if I had seen something different over here, I might have had more of a problem. But look at this. Somebody explain to us, how is this a feasible structure for the steps that are here? How can they do this? It's a variation of the most multifunctional team. What they said was, first of all, yeah, we have an accounting person in operations. Why do we have to go to central accounting for a simple accounting process or for an approval, especially if it's our money anyway? So, so they just reached agreement with accounting that the operations accounting person could take care of that, and they don't have to hand off and wait for it to come back. Oh, our person is on vacation this week. We'll get it logged in when they get back next week. No, none of that kind of stuff. Central maintenance, they said, we've got enough unsafe conditions out there. We know we can justify at least one, if not more, full-time central maintenance needed. The same with engineering. So these engineering and central maintenance were assigned for a period of time, probably a year or more, to be reporting into operations as part of the operations team. It's kind of a variation of the multifunctional. In fact, if you looked at if the fly on the wall saw them doing their work, the multifunctional group would come together and do exactly what you were saying, only they're all aligned with the operations organization, and there's no problem. Now, 12 months after this was alive and well and rolling, and unsafe conditions were being eliminated, and the unspoken byproduct of all this was that operations now was very clearly accountable for safety. They couldn't point to anyone else not giving them what they needed and support they needed. They were now clearly accountable. In the operations area, which was 95% of the plant, there were, in the next year, 0 recordable injuries. Basically, an injury-free workplace. And it was an amazing turnaround, one that was very gratifying to me and to the plant manager to see that people were capable of this, but the organization, or the lack thereof, had led to abysmal results. you work with that with some sophistication, like you all showed here, in 15 minutes, and you all improved on this significantly. I thought this was an elegant, but the cross-functional team would have been just as effective, I would say, especially if everybody bought into it. One of the operations managers after this, he came in to me and he said, what I noticed was we went through this. How we've been managing safety is how we've been managing everything else in the plan. All the expertise has moved into the central groups and away from the different operational units. He says, this is a calling card. Go back and revisit some of these decisions. Thank you.